We interrupt today's Taking Care of Business show to bring you a special show, the Hired Hearts Show with owner Karen Green, who guide you through today's healthcare maze. Stay tuned for topics such as case management, guardianship, chart reviews, timelines, and summary. Just a few of the areas for better healthcare solutions Hired Hearts delivers. You can contact Karen at 561-432-7800 and let Hired Hearts be your care management and guardianship consultants. That's 561-432-7800. Now, here's the Hired Hearts Show with your host, Karen Green.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. This is my debut interview, and I'm very excited to have my friend and main guest, Heather Boyer Samuels, joining me this evening. She is a representative of Solkoff Legal, one of their associates, and Heather is, a little nervous, excuse me. She's an attorney with Solkoff Legal, concentrating her practice in the areas of Medicaid, asset protection planning, estate planning, probate, and trust administration and guardianship. Prior to joining the Solkoff Legal PA, Heather worked as an associate attorney at an AV-rated boutique litigation firm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Heather graduated cum laude and within the top 20% of her class at Nova Southeast University's Shepherd Broad Law Center, and was an advocate with the Moot Court Society. While studying at the Harriet L. Wilkes Honors College at Florida Atlantic University, Heather clerked at Solkoff Legal and has therefore come full circle. Prior to law school, Heather earned a master's degree in women's studies and taught women's studies classes at Florida Atlantic University. Heather remains an adjunct professor at the Florida Atlantic University and teaches gender, law, and society. She is also a rules change liaison for the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar and serves on the Elder Law Student Liaison Committee. I am so happy to have you here tonight. It's my pleasure to have my first interview with you, and I can't wait to hear everything about Medicaid.
Well, I'm honored to be here, Karen.
Thank you.
Very special to be part of your debut.
So let's start with, what does an elder law attorney do?
So we get this question quite often. An elder law attorney is different from an estate planning attorney, different from a litigator. And the reason that an elder law attorney is different and why people want to go to elder law attorneys is because we concentrate the majority of our work on planning for long-term care. And so although we do estate planning and we do guardianships and probates and trust administrations, really why somebody would come to an elder law attorney is because we can protect their assets against the cost of long-term care, which is a very important thing to be able to do here in the state of Florida, here in South Florida, and even across our country, where long-term care and nursing home care, assisted living care is not something that we are provided with as citizens and as taxpayers.
Absolutely. There's a huge shift with all the changes in the Medicaid program. But can you talk a little bit about the look back? I know a lot of people are concerned about that. It's always a big question.
Right. And so anytime a client comes to us, we describe the qualifications for Medicaid. You know, you can't have more than $2,000 to your name. You can't have more than just under $2,200 in income in order to be eligible for the Medicaid program, plus a number of other medical and other qualifications. But people come to us and they have a nest egg. They've saved all their lives and they're facing these long-term care issues. And so the first question they ask is about this 5-year look-back period. They want to know if we shelter their money, do they have to wait 5 years to get the benefits? The answer is that the 5-year look-back period is part of the federal law called the Deficit Reduction Act. And in practice, it means that when we apply for Medicaid, when we complete that application, when you're down to the minimum in assets, Medicaid essentially looks at your financials for 5 years and looks to see if you've made any gifts. And to Medicaid, a gift is something that you've given, money that you've given, and you've gotten less than fair market value in return. And so Medicaid looks at those gifts and they say, you gave away your money to be able to get Medicaid, so we're going to penalize you. But our planning as elder law attorneys gets around that gifting requirement, or that gifting look back period. It doesn't mean you can't get Medicaid for 5 years. Even if you give a gift that Medicaid thinks is improper, very often a qualified elder law attorney can plan around that. And so we're good at it. We do it all the time. And even if you have money, we can protect your assets so that you can get Medicaid. You don't have to worry about the look back.
And how does that differentiate between a couple versus a single person?
You know, that's a great question. We very often plan for couples and for single people. With a couple, there are different planning strategies that we use. A lot of the times a couple together could have more money that we're able to protect than a single person. But, you know, with a couple, there are much more in the way of things that we can spread out as far as the funds, especially if there's a well spouse and an institutionalized spouse, such that we're able to make it that the well spouse or the community spouse is able to have a lot of the money in their name, so they're able to continue to live, so they're able to continue to have their home and enjoy life while their sick spouse is in a facility many times, and they're able to go visit and they're able to take care of their health. And so, you know, planning for a couple is different, and it's something that, whether single or a couple, really involves the whole family. In fact, in our firm, our asset protection planning is called family asset protection planning. So whether it's a couple or a single, there's always family members involved, and we're able to do both.
Absolutely. And as people age, when should they start looking to plan for their Medicaid future if they think that maybe at some point they might need it?
Well, the thing is, nobody thinks they're going to need Medicaid.
Right, and with the average cost of it being roughly $9,000 a month for any skilled nursing facility, you're looking at, you know, over $100,000 a year. I mean, when you can process that in your head and think, how am I going to afford this? And try to plan long term, and then also save for, you know, your spouse's future. If you predecease that person, you want to make sure that everything's in place. So at what point would you say, you know, now is the time, instead of waiting till last minute?
Well, there are many ways to look at it. Really, what we tell people is to think about payment for care. You can't predict anything. You don't have a crystal ball. So you have to think, okay, where does the money for care come from? It either comes from their private funds. So some people have millions of dollars saved so that they have enough money to privately fund their care. Right. Some people have very robust long-term care insurance policies that are able to pay towards the, you know, $300 a day that it costs for a nursing home. Others have to rely on the government. So there are only 3 pots of money to get to, and money buys care. And so what our work does is we allow people to access more pots of money, including the government. And so when people think about coming to an elder law attorney, a great time to come is if there's a diagnosis. A lot of the times people come because they were just diagnosed with dementia or Parkinson's disease, or they, you know, injured themselves such that they have to have some rehabilitation, and it scares them. And so they should come to the elder law attorney. And even if all we do is look at their estate plan, even if all we do is to say, wow, Mrs. So-and-so, you certainly should have a trust. You certainly should have a power of attorney. You certainly should have advance directives to protect against the need for a guardianship, because they are able to have long-term care insurance or enough money to self-finance care. It's good to get a checkup from an elder law attorney, and it's good to come to an elder law attorney so that you can have the peace of mind that you have a plan in place. If it's our asset protection plan, great. If you're self-financing your care, great. If you have sufficient long-term care insurance, great. But you should get checked out.
And how often would you say to revisit the documents that you've done? I know recently the power of attorney changed.
Right.
So people that had it prior to that change, you know, how does that affect them?
So we tell our clients to really review and look at their documents every 5 to 7 years. And you will hear from in the community, in the news, if laws change, because as an elder law community, we spread that knowledge. The power of attorney statute did change in October of 2011, and it really changed for the better. Our powers of attorneys are more robust, they protect people better, they're clearer. However, if you have a durable power of attorney from pre-2011, it doesn't mean that yours is bad and yours is no longer valid. It's valid if it was valid when made. The difference is that sometimes the banks, financial investment companies, other providers have a hard time looking at those because it's different from the current form they're used to seeing. So they'll give you a little bit of a hard time. Some people want to avoid that, and so they refresh their documents. They do a new one. Other people can't by reason of incapacity, and then that's a point where you get an attorney involved to justify the validity of your power of attorney, and we certainly do those things as well.
And one more question related to the power of attorney. If someone is in from another state, can we accept those documents in Florida? Are they valid?
Of course they're valid. Our country, the United States of America, a little history lesson, is a country where documents made in one state are valid in every other state because it's a constitutional system. And so our Constitution guarantees that. However, practically speaking, the problem lies in the way people look at the documents. They're used to seeing their state's forms. They're used to seeing their state's laws. And so if somebody is moving to Florida, or if somebody is a snowbird, meaning they spent part of the year in another state, it certainly behooves you to have a set of documents here for Florida. We work with a lot of New York attorneys just by nature of our location in Palm Beach County, Florida, and Delray Beach. And so we have a lot of clients that do have two sets of incapacity documents. They have the set in New York, the set in Florida, and each mentions the other so that they are protected and they have the most current forms wherever they are. And so it's not a bad idea.
Now, circling back to Medicaid.
Sure.
I know that one of the biggest questions is how much will the state pay? What will they cover? You know, there's a big expectation that in Florida that they will cover because there are so many seniors. Unfortunately, though, it's not quite the case. Can you expound a little bit on that?
That's true, Karen. There are two Medicaid programs that we really look at in our planning. One is called the Home and Community-Based Care Program. It's often nicknamed, people call it the Diversion Program, and that program pays a certain amount towards the cost of a assisted living facility or provides some assistance for care in the home. Certainly not sufficient for somebody that needs 24-hour care, but the idea, which is why it's called diversion, is to divert people away from a nursing home. It's a great program in practice, and when people are able to get those benefits, it helps them. But the state of Florida and its infinite wisdom, even though this is a terrific program, really doesn't fund the program fully. And unfortunately, there's a quite substantial waiting list for those benefits. The bigger benefit, and the benefit that really we encourage people to plan for, is what's called the Institutional Care Program Medicaid benefit. And that benefit, for which there is not a waiting list, pays for the full cost of a nursing home less your income. So that's a Social Security, a pension, that type of income. And we can help you plan so that you can get that benefit when and if you need it. And it's a really good financial benefit. And, you know, nobody wants to go into a nursing home, but the fact remains that a nursing home keeps people safe. And with the right plan in place, with the right professionals in your circle of trust, so to speak, you're able to get the best care, you're able to be safe, and you're able to give your family that peace of mind that they need, because families worry about you.
Absolutely. And can you tell me a little bit, or our audience, about the veterans' benefits? I mean, can you
Sure.
give a little guidance there?
So the Veterans Benefits works with certain kinds of Medicaid, most notably the Diversion Medicaid program. And so the Veterans Benefits allows you to get both. And so a lot of people turn to that in order to cover the cost of their assisted living. It helps with home care. There's a maximum that you're allowed to get as a veteran and a spouse. It's up around $2,000. For just a veteran, it's about $1,700, and for just a surviving spouse, it's about $1,100. Those are round numbers, and you have to qualify financially and medically. It's a long qualification process. VA applications, unfortunately, because of the bureaucracy of the VA, take about a year to process, but if you're able to financially qualify, which we assist with, if you're able to medically qualify and need their funds, that's it does you well to apply for that, because those benefits really help, especially if you're in assisted living and especially if you're paying for home care.
Absolutely. And I know that you and I have had many occasions to work together,
Yes,
whether it be for long-term placement. Hired Hearts has worked to facilitate that, or to bring in the right support staff in the home to keep them in their home as long as possible, as safe as possible. You know, we try to meet the needs of the family and in their environment.
Right.
So what would you say if someone says, I just don't know how to initiate a conversation with an elder law attorney, you know, and what would be the first step?
So when somebody needs care, and especially if somebody's getting care from somebody like a care manager, like your services often go to, we always tell people that you have to have a team in place.
Right.
And an elder law attorney is an essential part of that team, because we make it such that you can protect your assets against the cost of your long-term care. Money buys care, and we're able to allow you to save that money. And so if somebody is already working with a care manager or a financial advisor, and they say, why should I see an elder law attorney? Well, it makes financial sense to see an elder law attorney. And with a lawyer involved, we're able to give you a good picture of everybody that you need to work with. We're able to provide that essential piece of being able to possibly afford everybody else that you're working with, because you have the opportunity to set money aside because you have Medicaid to pay some portion of your care costs. We, in fact, always recommend people work with other professionals, and that's how we're fortunate enough to work together very often, Karen, because we know as elder law attorneys we're one part of the team. And so as part of the team at Solkoff Legal, we do what's called guidance for quality of life. That means if you have an accountant, a care manager, an agency, aides in place, we work with you. You have existing. If you don't have people in place, and we think you should, we recommend somebody, and we take that very seriously. We don't recommend anybody that we haven't vetted and we don't believe is able to help our clients. We take client feedback very seriously. And when you talk about seeing an elder law attorney, when you talk about seeing any attorney, you want to check out their qualifications. At Solkoff Legal, we work under Scott Solkoff, who is a board-certified elder law attorney. He is the co-author, along with his father, of West's Elder Law, and so he's a pioneer in this field, especially in South Florida. He's founded a lot of the planning techniques that all elder law attorneys use, and so you want to make sure you're using somebody qualified. And as somebody that works under Scott and works with him every day, I'm mentored very well. I'm very lucky to work with somebody that has such vision in this area. And so that comes with a lot of good, because we're able to handle all kinds of complicated things that come across our door, because people consider Scott very knowledgeable in the areas. And it's wonderful, because it's challenging for us. We keep learning more, and we can improve our book and our place in the community. Part of what we do and part of what we feel is important to do is educate people. And so whether we're telling people about somebody that they can go see, the best care manager or the best accountant, or somebody that they can have as an aide, we are coming full circle. We know that we are part of a community, and we hope to be part of people's teams when they need us. It's a lot of personal satisfaction in being an elder law attorney.
Wonderful. So tell me, are people able to receive Medicaid benefits with a long-term care policy, or does that negate the eligibility?
It depends on their long-term care policy. Unfortunately, most people don't have enough long-term care insurance to pay the full cost of their care, especially in a nursing home. I see long-term care policies a lot of the time. People are proud of them because they paid a lot of money for them and they paid for a long time to have them. But when they cover $100 a day for 2 years, that
Right.
really isn't sufficient to pay for their nursing home.
It's only about a third.
Right, right. And so what people are able to do, what we're able to help people do, is to get Medicaid in addition to their long-term care dollars. They're able to kind of bridge the gap, so to speak, between Medicaid and the long-term care insurance and their personal income. And why that is helpful to people, even somebody that's single and maybe doesn't have a spouse at home, is because Medicaid unfortunately doesn't pay for everything, doesn't pay for a private room. Some people want to use the money they've saved to be able to have a private room. For my ladies, they like to have somebody come and do their hair, come and do their nails.
Absolutely.
That's their quality of life. And so even if it's not a medical thing that they need, it's important to them. It really improves their outlook. They're in a nursing home. They want to have some semblance of their old life. So they have a perm, they have their manicure, they have their pedicure. Some of them go on vacation with their family. They're able to hire an aide to be able to go for the holidays. I know a lot of families during Hanukkah and Christmas, they leave the facility to spend time with their families, and they have to have 24-hour care. So they're able to hire somebody to do that because they have the money set aside. And so it's important to be able to maintain quality of life.
And exactly, that's what I was going to say. I mean, that's the one important thing that I'm taking away from this conversation is that you can still live your life if you're on Medicaid.
Right. And the government recognizes that. That's why they allow us to have all these tools, because you're supposed to be able to live life. They recognize that you had a life before this, and they want you to have a good quality of life. They just make it a little bit more difficult to get their money, and so that's where we come in.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about probate?
Sure. Now, with our estate planning, we generally try to help our clients avoid probate, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes clients want to have probate. Probate is a process by which when somebody dies, if they own assets in their own name, generally they have a will, and the will dictates where they want their money to go, to their children, their grandchildren, charities, etc. And so probate requires generally a court proceeding, and it requires, if the assets are over $75,000 or contain real estate, it requires you to hire a lawyer. And so we help people through probates, and generally the person that hires the attorney, they're named in the will, they're called the personal representative, and it's the personal representative's job to work with the lawyer to carry the wishes of the decedent through the court process. And so that means that they are hiring the lawyer, they're working to find out if there are existing debts, etc. And so the lawyer helps the personal representative to honor the wishes of the decedent as laid out in the will. If somebody doesn't have a will, there is an intestate succession law that any qualified elder law attorney can explain to the personal representative. And of course, we're available to help with probate as well.
Wonderful. So tell me, if you could change one thing in the healthcare system, what would that be?
Karen, you know what? That's an easy question. If I could change one thing in the healthcare system, looking at it from an elder law attorney, I would make it such that the government guaranteed long-term care. It should be a part of our healthcare system like it is across Europe, and we pay taxes just like they do. We should have long-term care. I don't think that's going to happen, and so that keeps me in business as an elder law attorney, but I'm happy to continue helping.
Wonderful. And I know that I've enjoyed our time together during this interview and our professional relationship working together. It's always a pleasure working with you. You're always knowledgeable, have an answer for everything. And if you don't have an answer, you get me an answer. And we're always able to help facilitate the needs of the client. And that's always a beautiful thing. You've been listening to Karen Green with Hired Hearts Radio. And the radio station is WNN 1470 AM. And the phone number is 888-565-1470. Now, I should have given that to you at the beginning of the show, but if you do have any questions, feel free to call in. You're welcome to reach either Heather or myself during the day in our real world of attorney work and case management, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Is there one final thought that you'd like to have tonight?
Well, Karen, I'd just like to thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be on your radio show debut. And if I can help anybody out there, I'm happy to receive your calls and your emails.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure doing this with you, and I hope we have an opportunity to do it again. Care management is a nice adjunct to the attorney world. We can help facilitate placement, long-term or short-term, respite care, coordinate all the medication needs, the doctor appointments, all the paperwork to help make sure that the documents are done, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. So it's a nice way to collaborate, and it's been a pleasure. I thank you.
Thank you.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Everyone deserves access to eye care. Unfortunately, some cannot afford comprehensive eye